Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, where today I'm going to be talking about the wild and wacky horror mystery The Corpse Vanishes from 1942. And the film begins by informing us that a strange phenomenon has been sweeping the land, young women dropping dead as they stand at the altar for their weddings. Even stranger, the bodies of the young women have all subsequently vanished. This has happened four times now, and unsurprisingly, people are getting a bit nervous about tying the knot. Some brides are determined to go ahead, though, with the police emphatically stating that they will be on the case. Specifically, they say, "We can't speak to the young man's health, but nothing will happen to her body if she does die," which is not really the most encouraging of promises. In any case, our headstrong bride does indeed drop dead at the altar, and you might want to be sitting down for this bombshell. The police failed to prevent her body from vanishing. Yeah, I was shocked too. Actually, I was a little bit surprised because I thought she might be the main character, but she's not. Fortunately for everyone, a young female reporter from the society pages is a bit more on the ball than the authorities, and she takes up the mantle of our main character when she notices a strange flower in the bride's bouquet. Eager to investigate a real story, she sets out to discover if there is a link between the unusual bloom and the strange events that have been unfolding. Now, of course, chasing after murderers is a dangerous game, and our feisty heroine will have to be on her toes, or she will soon find herself added to the list of disappearing corpses. So the Corpse Vanishes was a Monogram Pictures production. Monogram made a lot of cheap, B quality horror films like this one in the very late 30s and early 40s. How like this one? Well, like this one, they largely all shared the same man playing the primary villain, former box office star Bela Lugosi, whose career had fallen on hard times. And like this one, they often have been written with little regard for awkward things like logic or coherency. I've previously discussed some of the other outcomes that this approach produced in my Bela Lugosi's movies video back in July last year. For now, suffice it to say, I wasn't much impressed with any of those, so I went into this movie with low expectations, which may go some way to explaining why I rather enjoyed myself, because it was better than I expected. Now, let me be clear, that is not to say that The Corpse Vanishes is good. It's complete nonsense from a scripting perspective, and it suffers from the usual weaknesses of these fast, cheap productions: weak supporting actors, often limited set design. But this movie somehow contrives to be fun nonsense. So when it ended, I sat down and had to think about why and how it managed to entertain me despite its many obvious weaknesses, and here's what I came up with. So the 1940s horror films of Monogram Pictures are well known for their wacky premises and plots. So when the website 1000 Misspent Hours describes this as the screwiest of them all, you know you're in for something that makes even the most off-the-wall efforts of other studios seem very bland and tame in comparison. And The Corpse Vanishes does not hide its crazy light under a bushel, that's for sure. It shines out bright and clear from the very first scene. After all, its starting point is to posit a villainous conspiracy that's capable of not just getting to and murdering these women, despite all the security precautions, and then inspiriting away the bodies from under the very nose of the police, but who are also apparently not bright enough to consider that the very flamboyance and theatricality of their crimes make them far easier to identify and solve than they otherwise might be. Anybody smart enough to make this plan ought to be smart enough to come up with a better plan, in other words. But trust me, all of that is only a launch pad for the real madness, because this is the kind of movie where the perpetrator's crimes and their nutty science fiction reasons for committing them are, in fact, amongst the least strained and bizarre elements of the film. I mean, compared to the straight-faced delivery of the line, "I have no recollection of that conversation, but it was possible. It is possible I was speaking to her while in a somnambulistic state," or the fact that the villain and his wife sleep in matching his and hers coffins. Not that they're vampires, mind you, it's just something they do. The original premise starts to look positively pedestrian. I mean, heck, let's create a crime wave so bizarre it can't help but become the focus of everyone's attention. Isn't even the strangest or most counterproductive choice the villains will make in this movie. Ironically, taken alone, any such individually daft decisions would irritate me. But when unleashed in a tsunami of silliness like this, I found myself swept along for the ride. It probably didn't hurt my enjoyment of the film that the central female character, rookie reporter Patricia Hunter, is not just another example of the formulaic 1940s feisty female go getter archetype. Now, this is not to say that she isn't a feisty go getter. She is. But in this sort of low budget 1940s film, that archetype's feisty go getter nature was more often an informed attribute than an exhibited one. The young woman would tell other characters, and thus the audience, that she was ambitious and capable, but she would actually exhibit very little of the chutzpah she claimed as her defining trait. That is not the case with Patricia Hunter, who consistently chases her story in the face of adversity and who both makes and executes plans. Now, I'm not saying she doesn't get things wrong or that her plans always work as she intended, because that's definitely not the case. And even a proactive female lead like this can't avoid getting pigeonholed into being a damsel in distress at some point in the movie. But overall, Patricia's an engaging and enjoyable leading lady whose ambition and initiative to solve the crime not only drives much of the film, but quite frankly puts the movie's police force to shame. Now, Monogram Pictures was a Poverty Row film studio, which meant movies made fast and cheap. The studio released 49 films in 1942 alone, for instance, basically one a week. Much as with daytime soap operas, that kind of production schedule leaves little time for multiple takes and intricate acting finesse. Often, of course, that sort of constraint leads to flat or leaden performances where actors grind out their lines in barely animated performances. Not so here, or not in all cases at least. Some of the secondary casts do exhibit the normal, barely adequate acting formula, and Luana Waters is sometimes a little bit stiff in the role of Patricia Hunter. But then we get to the villainous cast members, and a whole different film emerges. Top bill Bela Lugosi, essaying a role he could probably have pulled off in his sleep, and his villainous co-stars have apparently decided the only way to properly perform their parts in this film is to go full ham. They launch themselves into their roles with gusto, gnawing on the scene's slightly tatty scenery without any concern for restraint or, presumably, for the somewhat musty taste of said scenery. And this is absolutely the right choice. The Corpse Vanishes is an utterly goofy movie and in no way a film where subtlety or nuance would have worked. Go big and go silly. So, yeah, with its utterly goofy plot, feisty, if not always terribly bright main character, thoroughly over the top villains, that's a formula that somehow makes the corpse vanishes fun, despite the fact that, I mean, technically it's kind of rubbish. But yeah, that assessment, rubbish but fun, was my immediate reaction after watching the movie, and I don't see any reason to change it. Next time, the 1992 sports comedy A League of Their Own was a surprise critical and commercial success, but we aren't going to talk about that movie, at least not directly. Instead, I'm going to be looking at Amazon's reboot TV series released 30 years later. But that is for next time. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've seen this film, let me know what you thought of it.